Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Bradbury. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. We are just a few subscribers shy of 1,200, and with your help, we can get there today. So, it's been a while since my last Ray Bradbury review, and I'm going to get back to it today. We do have about 25 or so more stories left in this series before we move on. But for today, we are talking about June 2003, Way in the Middle of the Air, which was first published in 1950 in Other Worlds. Description. In an unnamed southern town, a group of white men learn that all African Americans are planning to immigrate to Mars. Samuel Teese, a racist white man, decries their departure as a flood of African Americans passes his hardware store. He tries to stop one man, Belter, from leaving due to an old debt, but others quickly take up a collection on his behalf to pay it off. Next, he tries to detain Silly, a younger man who works for him, saying that he signed a contract and must honor it. As Silly protests, claiming that he never signed it, one of Teese's friends volunteers to take his place. Several of Teese's friends stand up to him and intimidate him into letting Silly depart. As Silly drives off, he yells to Teese, "What you gonna do, Knights?" referring to Teese's nightly activities with a gang that had terrorized and lynched blacks in the area. The enraged Teese and a friend give chase in his car, but soon find the road cluttered with the discarded belongings of her rocket passengers. After a return to the hardware store, Teese refuses to watch as the rockets lift off, wondering how he and his friends will spend their nights from now on. He takes a small triumph in the fact that Silly always addressed him as Mr. even as he was leaving. So, could there be a more timely story in 2020, given all that is currently going on in our society? But this story was written in 1950, really before the greater part of the civil rights movement even kicked off, really before the heyday of King and others in the 60s. But this certainly was a movement that was on the horizon. It was coming. And this must have been a pretty progressive and pretty controversial story for its time. Today, I think, due to its uses of racial slurs, but not as an insult to African Americans, but actually as a device in the story to display the inhumanity of the characters. Given these elements and the fact that Ray Bradbury himself is white, I'm afraid that he would probably be criticized and canceled today. But this story is written from a place of compassion. Bradbury was obviously a progressive mind here. He was not a racist, and he was doing his best to depict and portray sort of a version of the suffering of people in that time as best he could from his point of view. Today, as I was saying, this would cause a cancellation. If this was one of the recent things was, like with The Simpsons, suddenly people who are white who voice characters that are black are no longer allowed to do that. You can't have blackface. That sort of makes sense. But there's all these cases where, even I heard a case recently where a woman who had yet to release a book about a sort of a small community of African American islanders, she was criticized because she was not of this small dying culture. And basically somebody said, you can't do that. You can't possibly know their point of view because you're not from that group. And I think that is bullshit. I think, if anything, you need outsiders from those communities, people who are outside the communities, to get the ball rolling, to get the discussion rolling. And that actually helps open the doors for people within them, those communities, and gives them sort of a reason to begin to tell their own stories, and sort of gives them the courage to do that and the opportunity to say, okay, maybe you saw it this way, but here's my point of view from somebody who was actually a part of that community. And I think it's very important that we allow artists to continue to create and to not live in fear of insulting somebody when your goal is, of course, not to insult people. I think intent is everything, and that's being missed in the current sort of climate. There are certainly people who need to be canceled, who need to be shot down because they obviously have an agenda that is wrong. I get that, but it's very crucial, I think, that you don't cancel people who are actually your allies. And I think that is something to be taken away from looking at these stories written in an older era and sort of applying them to today. We saw this a few weeks ago with Gone with the Wind being sort of taken off of HBO Max. It'd be a shame if way in the middle of the air, part of the Martian Chronicles was suddenly removed from all future collections by Ray Bradbury. So that's my opinion. May not be yours. That's okay. As long as you have an opinion, that's what counts. And if you can sort of share it politely in the comment section below, feel free to do that. Either way, give this video a thumbs up, support our channel, help us continue to grow, and to continue to look at these stories by Ray Bradbury for the time being. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you again soon.